So I'm going to be talking to you today about Predictor. It's a tool that we've produced to help people to estimate the time requirements needed for systematic reviews and systematic maps. And we've produced this tool based on information available in the evidence base on systematic reviews and maps that have been published within CE to date. So often we're faced with the question, how long is a systematic review going to take? How much time will it take and how much will it cost? And that's often an issue similar to how long is a piece of string. It really depends. We know that they're substantial undertakings, and the previous guesstimates of how long they need to complete have been fairly anecdotal, ranging between 300,000 and between 30,000 and 300,000 US dollars, for example, is one that CE has quoted, and from 6 months to 5.5 years. More recently, there's been an estimate based on the Prospero database, which registers when systematic review protocols and reviews are initiated and completed. But this is largely ignoring the amount of time needed to conduct the review, and is mainly based on organizational structures that dictate when documents are completed. So there's a real need to better understand how much time is required to do a review before people start. And so largely what we know so far is anecdotal. So the methods that we used to try to understand this was firstly to review all CE systematic reviews and maps, and to better understand the volume of evidence people are dealing with, and then to conduct a survey of experienced systematic reviewers to understand how quick they are at different processes and how long different processes take in a per record basis. And then we can use those bits of data to calculate an average time for an average CE systematic review or map. And based on the available evidence that we have, we can calculate a measure of uncertainty, an error plus or minus, around those averages. And we realize that in doing so, we're actually able to produce a tool that people can then use as a basis for estimating the time taken for their review by putting in information they know about their own case study. So firstly, we reviewed all papers in the Environmental Evidence Journal and the CE Library published between March 2012 and May 2017. We looked at both protocols and reports because the protocols outlined some methodological information, but we took reports where they were published because they had even more methodological details. We found 66 systematic review papers and 20 systematic maps. And interestingly, only 25% of the final reports of reviews and maps provided data for all of the stages of a systematic review. Generally, the volume of evidence found wasn't reported very clearly at each step. And then the second part of our methods was to conduct a survey of experienced reviewers. So from the review and map documents we were able to find, we identified 61 corresponding authors. We also compiled a database of 34 personal contacts, and we invited them to take part in an online survey asking questions about the time needed for each stage. And we received 27 valid responses, and we also were able to get 6 experimental subjects to have their data recorded during the conduct of a systematic review. And these are the kind of questions we asked: how many reviews they'd undertaken, how long it takes to download search results, the number of titles they could screen per day, the number of full text they could retrieve per day, etc. So we took the volume of evidence and the speed of activity and combined that with a small number of fixed values and produced an average estimate of time requirements. So this is the first draft of the tool. It was produced in Excel, whereby the user can replace values in blue where they know more about their own evidence base, for example, by doing scoping or proportional relevance checking of a draft search. And then it calculates an overall time requirement. Martin Westgate, my collaborator, produced a tool within R that uses a shiny dashboard that's now available online. That's much more interactive and far easier to use. And I'll come back to that in a second. But this was the findings of the evidence base, that up at the top we see systematic reviews and the average amount of evidence. For example, the number of search results on average was 12,000. And after duplicate removal, this dropped to about 8,500. And you can see the progression of evidence through the evidence synthesis process. You can also see this is plus or minus 1 standard deviation, so you can see how variable the results were. And for systematic maps on the bottom, this is even more variable because there were fewer maps than there were reviews. But you can see also that the volume of evidence there was much larger for maps. And so onto the average time requirements for systematic reviews broken down across these different stages. We found that systematic reviews on average take 157 days, plus or minus 22. And for systematic maps, this was understandably larger because the evidence base was larger. And we found it would take, on average, 209 days, plus or minus 53, so the variability there is larger. There's an option within systematic maps, obviously, of conducting critical appraisal, and this 209 average time requirement is excluding critical appraisal stages. So we've produced this tool. It's now hosted on www.predictor.org, which includes some descriptive information and a link to the raw data and the file, the manuscript that's currently a prepress currently in review. And this is what the tool looks like. The user can change these values when they know more about their own set of data, and the colored graph in the middle shows the time requirement for each step of the process, along with the number of articles on the right, in the graph on the right. And it provides a total number of full-time equivalent days, of which 25 days in this case are needed for administration. And you can also put in the full-time equivalent staff availability to predict the total time requirement based on your available staff resources. So we know we need to do more here. We don't have a large number of systematic reviews and maps, which is why we have a large standard deviation around our data. So we want to get more data from published reviews and maps, but also we want to improve the data that we collected from survey respondents. What we're hoping to do is to integrate data collection with systematic review, submission and publication in EEJ. We're hoping to be able to do this through ROSES, the reporting standards for systematic evidence syntheses, whereby authors are requested to provide information like the number of search results and the number of results going through each stage that can then feed back into this larger database where we're better able to understand what methods people are using and what they find. And we also want to get more respondents and try to collect data experimentally. The data we collected was from surveys, so there's obvious recall bias limitations there. But one option there is for us to build in a data collection portal within, or facility within review management software like EpiReviewer, so people can submit their own data as they are conducting a systematic review. And this together will allow us to hone down this estimate to be more and more precise. And then what we want to do as well is to test the predictions. So where people have calculated an estimation for the amount of time needed for a systematic review, we'd like to follow that through and see how far from the actual time requirements we were, to see whether it's an accurate and useful tool. And we're hoping to expand and build beyond just environmental evidence to make the tool useful and based on evidence from different disciplines like healthcare and social welfare. And I'd just leave you here on this final slide, reminding us of their time requirements. And maybe this rings true with you. Maybe you think that 157 days for a systematic review is fairly accurate in total. Maybe that seems like too little. But we definitely encourage you to have a look at what we've found in the evidence base, and to contact us if you have any comments or if you have any feedback. And please feel free to go to predictor.org to try out the tool for yourself. Thank you.